You know how everyone talks about honey being this incredible superfood, like it's straight from nature, completely untouched, just bees doing their thing with flowers? Well, I've got some news that's going to completely change how you shop for honey. And honestly, it's pretty disturbing. Here's what's actually happening in the honey industry right now. The vast majority of honey sitting on Australian supermarket shelves isn't what you think it is. We're talking about a massive problem here. When independent labs actually test this stuff, they're finding that roughly 80% of the imported honey being sold across Australia has been tampered with. They're adding cheap sugar syrups to bulk it up and increase profits. But wait, it gets even worse. This isn't just about imported brands anymore. And even companies that are supposedly Australian are getting in on the action, cutting their genuine honey with these fake imported varieties to make more money. So you're standing in the supermarket aisle, looking at these premium priced jars, thinking you're getting the real deal, and what are you actually taking home? Flavored sugar syrup with maybe a splash of actual honey thrown in to make it look legitimate. And I'm not talking about products that are slightly diluted. Some of these bottles labeled as honey don't contain a single drop of what bees actually produce. Instead, you're getting rice syrup or corn syrup that's been doctored with artificial honey flavoring and some coloring to make it look right. It's basically a complete scam. By the time you finish reading this, you're going to know exactly which brands you need to avoid like the plague, and I'll show you how to identify fake honey so you never get ripped off again. Number 7. Capilano Pure Honey. Alright, let's kick things off with the big one, the brand that basically owns the honey game in Australia. You've definitely seen Capilano, right? Those iconic squeeze bottles are absolutely everywhere in supermarkets. They've become almost synonymous with honey in this country. You're looking at around $8 for a 500-gram bottle, which puts it somewhere in the middle price-wise. Not the cheapest option, but definitely not the most expensive either. So you'd think you're getting decent quality for that price, right? Here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean problematic. Despite what the packaging wants you to believe with all those images of Australian bees and native flowers, Capilano isn't actually pure Australian honey. Not even close. What they're actually doing is blending imported honey with Australian honey. And here's the kicker. The proportions change constantly based on whatever's cheapest at the time. So one batch might have more Australian honey, the next might be mostly imported, and you'd never know the difference. Now, if you look really carefully at the label, you'll find the words blend of Australian and imported honey printed in tiny letters somewhere on the back. But let's be real, how many people are actually reading that fine print when they're rushing through their grocery shopping? And most folks see the Australian branding all over the front and assume they're buying 100% Australian honey. Instead, you could be getting a mixture that's 70% or even more from overseas. And where's this imported honey coming from? Mostly China, where the honey industry has serious issues with fraud. Chinese honey is frequently bulked up with rice syrup or high fructose corn syrup to increase the volume they can sell. It's a huge problem in that market. This actually got tested back in 2018 when Fairfax Media commissioned independent laboratory analysis on various honey products. When they tested Capilano samples, the results showed chemical markers that were consistent with adulteration. Basically, the scientific signature suggested there were added sugars in there, not just pure honey. Capilano's response? They denied everything and refused to hand over a detailed laboratory results that could prove their honey was pure. If you've got nothing to hide, why not just show the data, right? What really gets under my skin about this whole situation is how deliberately deceptive the marketing is. The packaging is covered in Australian imagery. They emphasize over and over that they're an Australian company, and the whole presentation is designed to make you think you're buying Australian honey. But that's not what you're getting. You're buying from an Australian company, sure, but they're selling you blended honey that's predominantly imported. So at $8 for 500 grams, you're paying what you'd expect to pay for genuine Australian honey. But you're actually getting a product that's partially made from questionable imported honey that may or may not be legitimate. Number 6. Woolworths Select Honey. Moving on to the supermarket house brands, and this is where things get really ugly. Woolworth's own brand honey is absolutely everywhere in their stores, and at $6 for 500 grams, it looks like you're getting a bargain. Let me be completely blunt here. This stuff is absolute garbage. It's terrible. If you check the label, you'll see those same words, blend of Australian and imported honey. But what that actually means in practice is that it's predominantly imported Chinese honey with just enough Australian honey mixed in that they can legally slap the word Australian somewhere on the packaging. The really damning evidence comes from independent testing. When laboratories analyze supermarket house brand honey products, they consistently show the highest rates of adulteration among all the honey tested. These products are failing purity tests left and right. The chemical analysis reveals markers that indicate added rice syrup or corn syrup has been mixed in. You don't even need a laboratory to figure out something's wrong, though. Just taste it. The flavor profile is completely off. It's overwhelmingly sweet, but in this really one-dimensional way, and there's this slightly chemical aftertaste that lingers. Real honey has this incredible complexity to it, with flavors that vary depending on which flowers the bees were visiting. This Woolworth stuff just tastes like sugar syrup with some artificial honey flavoring thrown in. The texture tells you something's wrong too. But it's unnaturally smooth and liquid, staying that way indefinitely. Here's the thing about real honey. It crystallizes over time because it's a supersaturated sugar solution. That's normal and natural. Honey that stays permanently liquid has either been heavily processed or it's fake. Simple as that. There's another red flag that shows up in laboratory testing: suspiciously low pollen counts. Real, genuine honey should contain pollen from the flowers that bees visited while collecting nectar. When you find honey with very low pollen content, it suggests the product has been ultrafiltered to remove that pollen. Why would they do that? Because pollen is evidence of geographical origin. It's a common trick used to hide where fake Chinese honey actually came from. At $6 for 500 grams, you're getting exactly what you're paying for, which is fake honey that's mostly just sugar syrup dressed up to look like the real thing. Number 5, Kohl's house brand honey. Okay, so it's basically the same story with Kohl's, just a different label slapped on it. Their house brand honey runs about $5.50 for 500 grams, making it cheap Chinese honey that's been cut with syrup and then blended with just the bare minimum of Australian honey they need to keep things legal. Depending on which variety you pick up, the label will say either product of Australia and China or blend of Australian and imported honey. Either way, the end result is the same. You're predominantly getting Shao imported honey. What makes the Kohl's honey particularly concerning is just how aggressively they ultra-filter this stuff. They run it through filtration that's so extreme, the final product contains almost no pollen whatsoever. And again, you have to ask, why would they go to such lengths to remove pollen? The answer is pretty disturbing. Chinese honey frequently contains antibiotics, pesticides, and heavy metals that are completely banned in Australia. By ultrafiltering to strip out all the pollen, they can effectively hide where the honey originated and avoid detection of these contaminants. But here's the problem with that approach. Ultrafiltration doesn't just remove the bad stuff. It also strips out all the beneficial enzymes, the antioxidants, and the trace nutrients that actually make real honey good for you. What you end up with after all that processing is basically just sugar water. You've lost everything that made it honey in the first place. When independent laboratories test Kohl's honey, they're finding chemical markers that are consistent with rice syrup adulteration. The ratios of different types of sugars, specifically C4 sugars, suggest there are added cheap sugars in there, not pure honey. At $5.50 for 500 grams, this is literally some of the cheapest honey you can buy. Think about the economics for a second. Real Australian honey costs beekeepers around $12 per kilogram to actually produce. When you're selling at retail for $11 per kilogram, the math just doesn't work. It's impossible for that to be real honey. The only way those numbers make sense is if it's fake. Number 4, Beechworth honey. Now this one catches people by surprise because Beechworth has really good marketing working for them. They've positioned themselves as this quality Australian honey brand. They've got that rustic packaging with the country town name and this whole deep heritage story they tell. At $12 for 400 grams, you're definitely paying premium prices, so you'd expect premium quality, right? But here's the reality. Beechworth does exactly what Capilano does. They blend imported honey with Australian honey. If you look for it, you'll find the words blend of local and imported honey printed in small text somewhere on the label. So you're paying $30 per kilogram for honey that's partially imported Chinese honey. Let that sink in for a moment. What makes Beechworth particularly sneaky is how their marketing is set up. Everything emphasizes that they're Australian family-owned. The packaging is covered in Australian landscapes and imagery. They're deliberately creating this impression that you're buying pure Australian honey. But you're not. They're an Australian company, absolutely, but what they're doing is buying cheap imported honey, blending it with some local honey, and then charging you premium prices for the mixture. Independent testing has found chemical markers in Beechworth honey samples that suggest adulteration. When questioned about this, the company insists their quality control is extremely rigorous, but they refuse to publish independent laboratory results that would actually prove their honey is pure. If your product is genuinely pure, why wouldn't you want to prove it? What's the reason for not being transparent about that? To be fair, the taste is noticeably better than what you get from Coles or Woolworths because there's a higher percentage of real honey in the blend. But you're still fundamentally paying premium prices for a blended product when you should be getting pure honey at that price point. At $12 for 400 grams, you absolutely deserve actual pure Australian honey, not some blend that includes imported honey of questionable origin. Number 3. Alari Pure Honey. Alari markets itself as premium honey with absolutely beautiful packaging. The jars feature gorgeous images of Australian wildflowers and bees. At $15 for 400 grams, you're paying serious money here. That works out to $37.50 per kilogram. Surely at that premium price point, you're getting pure Australian honey, right? Nope. Wrong again. If you flip the jar around and search through the tiny print on the back, you'll find those familiar words. Blend of Australian and imported honey. You're paying premium prices for blended honey. Again, what makes Alari particularly offensive, in my opinion, is the word pure right there in the product name. Alari Pure Honey. When you read that, your brain naturally assumes it means pure, unblended honey. But that's not what pure means in this context. Pure just means it's honey without other additives. It doesn't mean it hasn't been blended with imported honey. This is deliberately deceptive labeling that's specifically designed to fool consumers who aren't reading carefully. Everything about the presentation screams premium quality. You've got nice glass jars, really attractive labels, and these products are positioned in the expensive section of the honey aisle. Every single element is telling you, this is premium Australian honey. But what you're actually getting is blended honey that's partially imported at $37.50 per kilogram. Alari is one of the most expensive honey brands you'll find in Australian supermarkets, and it's still not pure Australian honey. You're paying for marketing and fancy packaging, not for quality honey. Here's another interesting fact. Alari is owned by Capilano, so it's the exact same parent company selling you blended honey under different brand names at different price points. They've got the whole market segmented. Don't fall for it. Number 2, honest to goodness, this brand shows up in health food stores and in the organic sections of regular supermarkets. At $18 for 500 grams, it's expensive, working out to $36 per kilogram. The label prominently displays certified organic and uses all this ethical imagery and messaging. Surely organic honey is pure and trustworthy, right? Wrong. Let me explain why this is problematic on multiple levels. First issue, this isn't Australian honey at all. It's imported from Brazil, Mexico, or various other countries. So right off the bat, you're not supporting Australian beekeepers. Now, the organic certification does mean something. It means the bees weren't treated with synthetic chemicals, and the areas where they were foraging were free from pesticide spraying. That's legitimately good, but here's what organic certification doesn't mean. It doesn't mean the honey hasn't been adulterated. Independent testing has discovered that even certified organic honey can be cut with organic rice syrup or organic cane sugar syrup. The testing required for organic certification doesn't include testing for adulteration. These are completely separate issues. So you can absolutely have certified organic fake honey. The certification just means it meets certain environmental and production standards, not that it's pure honey. Second issue, this is imported honey that's been sitting in shipping containers for months during transport. Even if it was completely pure when it was first bottled at the source, the nutrients and enzymes in honey degrade during long-term storage and transport. By the time you're buying it off the shelf in Australia, it's nutritionally inferior to fresh, locally produced honey. Third issue, and this is the one that really bothers me, the environmental impact of shipping honey from Brazil all the way to Australia is completely absurd. We have excellent honey production right here in Australia. There's absolutely no logical reason we should be importing honey from the other side of the planet. At $36 per kilogram, you're paying premium prices for imported honey that may very well be adulterated and definitely has a massive carbon footprint associated with it. This is greenwashing at its absolute finest. Slap an organic label on the product, charge premium prices, and sell an inferior imported product while making consumers feel good about their purchase. Number 1. Woolworths Macro Organic Australian Honey. This is the absolute worst offender on this entire list, and it's the one that genuinely makes me angry. The Woolworths Macro range is positioned as their premium, ethical, organic product line. Their honey specifically is labeled as Organic Australian Honey, with all the certification symbols and Australian imagery you could want. At $22 for 400 grams, you're paying $55 per kilogram. That's premium pricing approaching what genuine artisan honey from small-scale beekeepers costs. Surely at $55 per kilogram, with organic certification and an Australian label, this has got to be the real deal, right? It's still problematic, and here's why. First, while it is technically Australian honey from certified organic operations, the organic certification comes from a private certifier that's been heavily criticized for having loose standards. Not all organic certifications are created equal, and this is one of the questionable ones. Second, the honey is still ultra-filtered and heavily processed. The organic label doesn't prevent ultrafiltration, which removes pollen and all those beneficial compounds that make honey healthy. You're getting nutritionally depleted honey even though it's organic and Australian. Third, and this is the most important point, the honey is blended from multiple Australian sources. When honey gets blended like this, quality can vary dramatically from batch to batch. Some batches might be excellent, others might contain honey from hives that were fed sugar water during drought conditions, which is technically allowed under some organic standards in certain circumstances. What makes Woolworths Macro Organic Honey the absolute worst is the price combined with what you're actually getting. At $55 per kilogram, you're paying the exact same price as genuine single-origin artisan honey from small beekeepers who can personally guarantee purity and quality. But instead, you're buying from Woolworths, a massive corporation that's been caught in numerous food quality scandals over the years. The money you're spending goes to Woolworths' corporate profits, not to the beekeepers who actually produce the honey. You're paying premium artisan prices for corporate organic honey when you could be buying directly from actual beekeepers for the same price and getting guaranteed quality. This product exists purely to capture the premium organic market segment while funneling money to Woolworths instead of to genuine small-scale producers. It's exploitation disguised as ethics, and that's why it's number 1 on this list. At understanding the bigger picture, here's what you really need to understand about the honey industry as a whole. It's one of the most fraudulent food industries in the entire world. This isn't just an Australian problem, it's global, but we're particularly vulnerable here because we import so much honey. The economics of honey fraud make it incredibly attractive to bad actors. Real honey is expensive to produce. Bees do all the work, but beekeepers still have significant costs. Fake honey made from cheap sugar syrups costs a fraction to produce. And if you can pass it off as real honey, the profit margins are enormous. Testing for honey adulteration is complex and expensive, so it doesn't happen as often as it should. Companies know they're unlikely to get caught, and even when they do, the penalties are often just a slap on the wrist compared to the profits they've made. What should you actually buy? So after all that bad news, what should you actually be buying? Let me walk you through the only honey brands that are actually worth your money. Number 1, Super Bee Raw Honey. Super Bee is an Australian company that sells raw honey exclusively from Australian beekeepers. At $28 for 500 grams, they're definitely premium priced, but in this case, you're actually getting what you're paying for. Their Manuka-style honey comes from bees visiting Australian leptospermum flowers, which is the same plant family as New Zealand's famous Manuka. The honey has similar antimicrobial properties to New Zealand Manuka honey, but it costs significantly less because it's not imported. What I really appreciate about Superbee is their transparency. They test every single batch and publish the methylglyoxal (MgO) content. This is the specific compound that gives Manuka honey its medicinal properties. Their honey ranges from 200 plus to 800 plus MgO, depending on the batch. Higher MgO means stronger antimicrobial activity, so you can choose based on what you need it for. The honey is completely raw and unfiltered. When you look at it in the jar, you can actually see tiny bits of wax and pollen floating around. This might look imperfect, but it's actually a really good sign that indicates minimal processing. This is what real honey looks like. Superbee sources exclusively from Australian beekeepers and pays them fair prices. When you buy Superbee, you're directly supporting Australian beekeepers while getting genuine medicinal-grade honey. Use this for sore throats, wound treatment, or anytime you need honey's antimicrobial properties. For everyday cooking and general use, buy their standard raw honey, which is less expensive than the high MgO varieties, but still excellent quality. Number 2, Tasmanian Leatherwood. Leatherwood honey from Tasmania is one of Australia's most unique honey varieties, and it's genuinely special. The leatherwood tree only grows in Tasmanian rainforests and nowhere else in the world, which makes this honey impossible to fake or replicate. Prices range from $18 to $25 for 350 grams depending on the brand, so it's definitely expensive. But the flavor is absolutely unlike any other honey you've ever tasted. It's spicy and complex with these incredible hints of wood smoke and flowers layered throughout. I have to be honest, the flavor is polarizing. Some people absolutely love it and become devoted fans. Others find it too intense and prefer milder honey, but that intensity is actually proof of authenticity. Leatherwood honey's flavor profile is so distinctive and unique that it cannot be successfully faked. Look for Tasmanian brands like Tasmanian Honey Company, The Honey Farm, or Winton's Honey. Make absolutely sure the label says 100% Tasmanian Leatherwood, not Tasmanian Blend, because blends might be cut with other cheaper honey varieties. Leatherwood honey is raw or minimally processed, so it retains all the beneficial compounds. The honey is thick, dark in color, and crystallizes readily, which are all signs of quality. This is premium Australian honey from a genuinely unique floral source. Use it in situations where you want the flavor to really shine, on sourdough toast, in tea, or just by the spoonful when you need the medicinal benefits. Number 3, Kangaroo Island. Kangaroo Island holds a special place in beekeeping history. It's home to the last pure strain of Ligurian bees in the entire world. The island has been a bee sanctuary since way back in 1885, with strict laws preventing any other bee varieties from being brought to the island. Honey from Kangaroo Island is genuinely unique and provably pure. Prices range from $25 to $35 for 500 grams depending on the specific brand, which is definitely premium pricing, but you're paying for a truly unique product. This honey comes from bees visiting native Australian plants on a completely isolated island. There's zero risk of contamination from imported bees or diseases. The biosecurity is incredibly strict. The flavor is distinctively Australian. Eucalyptus, wildflowers, coastal vegetation. It's complex and interesting, and it changes depending on the season and what's flowering at any given time. That variation is part of what makes it special. Kangaroo Island. Honey is minimally processed and genuinely pure. Buy from brands like Kangaroo Island, Honey Company, or Clifford's Honey. These are actual island beekeepers, not corporate brands pretending to be local. This is premium Australian honey from one of the world's most pristine and protected bee environments. You're paying for genuine quality and uniqueness. Number 4, Blue Hills. Blue Hills is a small Australian company selling raw, completely unprocessed honey from Australian beekeepers. At $16 for 500 grams, they're very affordable considering you're getting genuine raw honey. The honey is unfiltered, unheated, and unpasteurized. It's truly raw in every sense of the word. When you look at it, you can see bits of wax, pollen, and propolis in the jar. This is exactly what raw honey should look like. It's not pretty and uniform like processed honey, but that's the point. The flavor varies from batch to batch depending on what flowers were blooming when that particular honey was harvested. Sometimes it's light and floral, sometimes it's dark and intense. This variability is actually proof that it's real honey from real bees visiting real flowers. But fake honey always tastes the same because it's manufactured to be consistent. Blue Hills honey crystallizes within months of harvest because it's raw and unprocessed. If it separates into layers or gets cloudy, don't worry, that's completely normal for real honey. You can gently warm it if you want to liquefy it again. Blue Hills is available in some health food stores and online. At $16 for 500 grams, this is excellent value for genuine raw Australian honey. Buy this as your everyday honey for cooking, baking, and general use. You don't need to spend $30 to $40 per jar for everyday purposes. Number 5. Barnes Natural Honey. Barnes Natural is another small Australian company selling raw honey, this time from New South Wales beekeepers. At $18 for 500 grams, they're mid-premium pricing, which is fair for what you're getting. Their honey is cold extracted and minimally filtered. They strain out the larger bits of wax but deliberately leave all the pollen and beneficial compounds intact. The honey is thick, often cloudy, and crystallizes readily. These are all positive signs of minimal processing. Barnes sources exclusively from beekeepers in New South Wales and pays them fair prices. The company is completely transparent about their sources and production methods, which is refreshing in this industry. Their honey varieties change seasonally: yellow box, gray ironbark, mixed blossom, depending on what's flowering at the time. This seasonal variation is proof of authenticity. Imported blended honey is always the same because it's blended from multiple sources to create artificial consistency. Real local honey varies because nature varies. But Barnes Natural is available in independent grocers and online. This is honest, raw Australian honey at fair prices. Number 6. Westcoby Pure Australian Honey. Westcoby is a Western Australian company selling pure Australian honey exclusively from Western Australian beekeepers. At $15 for 500 grams, they're very affordable for genuine Australian honey. Label clearly and unambiguously states 100% Australian honey with absolutely no imported content. That's exactly what you want to see. Westcoby honey is minimally processed. They heat it just enough to make it pourable for bottling, and that's it. No ultrafiltration, no heavy processing, no nonsense. The honey crystallizes within months because it's real. The flavor is distinctively Australian eucalyptus. You can taste the jarrah, mari, and kari flowers. This is honest Western Australian honey at honest prices. Westcoby is available in Western Australian independent grocers and online. If you're in Western Australia, this is excellent everyday honey from genuinely local sources. Final thoughts. Here's something important to remember. Honey is meant to be a premium food that you consume sparingly, not a staple you go through bottles of every week. A jar of quality honey should last you months, not weeks. You don't need to be eating honey daily or using it as your primary sweetener. Use it occasionally for its unique flavor and medicinal properties. A spoonful when you have a sore throat, a drizzle on toast, a bit in your tea. Quality over quantity. Stop buying fake honey from supermarkets. Those squeezed bottles of cheap honey are just sugar syrup dressed up to look like honey. You're wasting your money on fake products while simultaneously destroying the market for genuine beekeepers. Australian beekeepers are literally going out of business because they can't compete with fake imported honey flooding the market at artificially low prices. When you buy real honey from real beekeepers, you're supporting an industry that's under threat. Make the switch to real honey. Your health will benefit, your taste buds will thank you, and you'll be supporting honest producers instead of corporate fraudsters.